Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Welcome inside the lodge today. Kind of a cold snap across the entire country, which directly connects to today's video. Being from the north, I always have to laugh every time it snows down here in what we refer to as the central part of the state here where I reside now in central Kentucky. When it snows, oh my God, the whole world shuts down, right? They had to laugh. This morning I got up and the governor of Kentucky has issued a state of emergency. So it's not funny. Be safe out there. The roads are probably kind of slick, and the problem with it is what we're going to talk about today. Folks down here aren't used to the snow and the winter conditions, and the maintenance isn't there on the roads. So that makes maybe a half inch of snow if it's not treated or plowed, and the ice isn't taken care of. That's probably like getting a foot of snow, up north. So Michigan, New York, whatever that case is. So be safe out there, guys. But that directly connects to today's video. What we're going to talk about is the power and acknowledgement of the entire country broke up into pieces as I see it per my profession. It's real easy, I think, in today's age, guys, and when we're talking about whitetails and whitetail habitat, is to just kind of cover certain things with a blanket, if you will, right? The problem with that is this. I don't think that that's a great I don't think that that's a great mindset to have. I don't think that that's a great strategy when you're recommending how certain places, how folks build their properties in certain parts of the country. I do really feel blessed to be able to, I think, to be pretty rounded of that. Born and raised in the north up in Michigan, and spent 5 years in the state of Illinois, have guided and traveled all over the country hunting, Montana, lived in the Midwest, like I said, and been starting to do a lot more work down in the Southeast. I think to each his own, right? To each area its own. There's certain things around this country, per the whitetail range, that can be devastating to the whitetail herd. Certain parts of the year, right? This is where I think that the education tool this time of the year can come in that I think a lot of folks overlook, and it's something that I have talked to many people about because I really believe in this. If you look across, folks that are doing that have that whitetail biology background, if you will, or education, right? There's a lot of folks that have that title that have or have researched in the northern part of the country. So I think that's a huge thing to keep in mind, whether that's Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, parts of Canada. Canada's got some great research up there because that research pertains to their area. Now, the Southeast is another perfect example. Great facilities, Georgia, Alabama, that Mississippi State, at the Deer Lab. There are so many things to learn per your region that may not connect to another part of the country, such as hunting the rut, right? We all talk about hunting the rut in November. Well, the rut doesn't happen in the Southeast or South Central until December. So how does that affect the hunt strategy of that, right? At the end of the day, guys, it all comes back to one thing. Per region, there are some major connections across the whitetail range. And that connection, guys, is today's topic of this video, is browse. I do not think that enough folks across this country put enough emphasis on the power of browse this time of the year, no matter where you're at in the country. And I'm going to touch on this real quick, guys, with this. Like I said, a lot to learn from the north up there, because those deer up there and the folks that live there know that you can have. So I'm going to tie that into a slogan or a topic that I talk about a lot with my clients all over the country, just not the north. I always tell everybody this, guys. You can have the best brassica food plots in the world. You can have 30-inch brassicas. If you do not have the browse that backs those food plots, your neighbors, your deer are going to be somewhere else, period. End of story. So the food plots are great. Am I saying don't plant food plots? Absolutely not. We work with a gentleman out of Michigan, John Comp at Northwoods Whitetail, lives in probably and hunts up there. Probably you could probably argue in some of the toughest whitetail areas in the country. One, to harvest. Two, to keep deer alive in general. Right? It's rough conditions up there this time of the year. I just seen pictures the other day, and this is actually from where my kids are at in a central part of Michigan right now, and family. Deer wading around belly deep. The UP is notorious for the Upper Peninsula of Michigan is notorious for getting more snow. So the Southeast doesn't have to worry about that. The South Central doesn't have to worry about that. But they've got their own hurdles, right? But as a whole, I think that someone like John that has the knowledge of a hardy food plot program and what else it takes to grow, hold, and keep deer alive is very, very important, right? So am I saying, like I said, am I saying take away your food plots? Absolutely not. I would never own a private piece of property. I would never hunt a public land piece of property that didn't offer food. Obviously, that's a huge part of the deer's world, right? But, so now saying that, I'm going to connect something to you here, guys. A lot of the hunting strategies that revolve around hunting green food sources, let's just say that, hunting on top of food plots, and building food plots, how to grow food plots. A lot of this stuff stems from the Midwest. Here's the problem with that. The Midwest is probably, in all honesty, is probably the easiest place in the entire country to grow and keep alive deer. Now, when I say that, the first thing that comes to my mind is they've got their own hurdle, right? EHD is totally devastation. Not food related, right? Not survival as far as their stomach. Something totally uncontrollable, and my heart goes out. I've experienced that on properties down there with my clients when I was living there. Huge devastation. TB, I experienced that in Wisconsin. Blue tongue out west. Those are things, guys, that we can't control, right? The food intake and the survival rate of deer, when it connects to them and us, the connection between them and us, if that's something that we can control, I think that we need to go the extra mile as far as land stewards to make sure that's right. And it all directly connects back to browse. So to finish that with the Midwest, guys, I think it's one of the easiest spots because of the food that they have. Great ground. You can grow great food plots. The Midwest as a whole will usually, the last couple of years probably aren't a good example of this, but the Midwest as a whole gets pretty good rainfall, right? That the South Central doesn't get, Southwest doesn't get, sometimes, a lot of times, the Southeast doesn't get. We haven't got a lot of it here in Central, right? In Kentucky here, West Virginia and Virginia. There's so much to be said for the Midwest as the ease, right? And so much, it's like, I guess a perfect example would be is the deer live in a darn buffet, right? There's food everywhere. Now, this day and age, what the struggle is there, farming is so efficient anymore that when the farmers take those crops off the field, you don't really have a lot left, right? And then in areas where it's legal, some areas it's not legal to do this, but then they go in and it's the tillage concern, right? Whatever is left gets turned down in the dirt, so then there is absolutely no food. The problem with that, guys, is this, and I've told this to everyone for years. If the Midwest was ever hit with 2-3 foot of snow that stayed and didn't leave, right? I always joked when I lived in Illinois, for example, guys, that if it snowed, it was gone by noon, and that's about what it is here. We've got snow on the ground right now. Probably within a couple of days, we won't have any snow. If the Midwest ever got locked in with bad weather conditions for long term, it would kill, sadly, it would kill every deer in the Midwest. Whatever EHD didn't get, the harsh winter conditions would kill. And why is that? Is because there's not enough browse being promoted through timbering, through regular harvest or regular logging practices, and hunter strategies. Why? It's because it's a second thought. It's food plots first and browse second, if they even think about food, if they even think about the browse, which they usually don't. More and more that this industry and this world of habitat improvement grows, I think that's changing. So, is the Midwest the spot of the country that you want to take all of your knowledge from somebody that lives in Illinois or Iowa, and just says plant food plots, put your box blinds over top of the food plots, and have a great season? Is that where I would take my information from? Absolutely not. Now, parts of the Midwest have lower hunting. Iowa, for example, Kansas have lower pressure, so they don't harvest as many deer. There's more food. The deer get bigger. It's not a secret. Iowa, Illinois, Kansas, Missouri, parts of Illinois, huge deer, right? Not only body, but score. A lot of big deer come from the Midwest. Why is that? It's because there's so much food, but there's zero browse, because the weather conditions are relatively good. If it ever got to a point, like I said, guys, that was bad, it would be a total devastation. So when you take the knowledge from the northern part of the country, like I said, and you realize the importance of that browse, I think the deer up there are rock stars, guys. I really do, is because the will to live up there is so unbelievable, right? A lot of winter kill in some spots. The wolves tie into that and everything else, predation, right? But the winters go on for months and months and months. Those green food plots, that 30-inch brassicas up there right now in the state of Michigan, New York, Wisconsin, Minnesota, you can have the greatest food plots in the world, guys, but if they're under 3 foot of snow and there's ice on top of them 30-inch brassicas, good luck, because there's nothing is going to get to them. Unless the only way that them deer up there survive is through the power of browse. The reason I touch on all that, guys, is just that. Connect your property to browse. If you understand why the deer in the north survive and strive, and they're 300 pounds in Canada, parts of Michigan and upper Wisconsin and Minnesota, huge bodied deer grow excellent antlers, is the reason is, guys, that's the only thing that they have to eat at certain times of the year is browse. So, should you be taking browse into this year's hunting strategy? Absolutely. Because of this reason. Not only is the food requirement of woody browse very important, it never drops below, that woody browse intake, guys, never drops below 50%. The desert, arid Southwest, the Pacific Northwest, the mountain regions of the country. Yes, there's whitetails here. The North, the Midwest, it never drops below. It's about 80% here in Central. Kentucky, West Virginia, the way I look at it, 75% here, like at the farm. The woody browse intake is 75%, 50% down in the Southeast. 90% of a deer's intake in the North is a woody browse, right? So very, very important. The problem with it is, guys, like I said, on the hunting strategy side, if you are putting food plots first and browse second, at some point your food plots are going to fail. And if you had browse, your hunting success would continue, but most of the time it ends. And why is that? Southeast, perfect example. Green, luscious food plots get kicking in. The later season comes, December, when their rut starts kicking down there. The hogs are out. The hogs destroy the food plots. Maybe you're not getting a lot of rain. The food plots go away, and the hunting success is in the toilet, right? Parts of here in Kentucky, right? Only sitting on top of corn, just like it would be sitting on top of a food plot. That corn runs out. You're not able to get down to your hunting property. Maybe you live an hour or two away. The feeder runs out. You get to the property. There's no deer. You feed the feeders up. A week later, all the deer are back. The feeder runs out. The deer leave. You know, that it's such a sad situation for me to see that folks don't understand, and don't, as a land steward and land manager, don't go the extra mile to give that requirement to the deer that is ever so important all over the whitetail range, the entire country, wherever whitetails walk, deer in general, mule deer, elk, coos deer, you know, the blacktails. It's browse. Browse is king, right? So when you connect that, like I said, to your hunting strategy, the mindset that you have on building a property and knowing that you're promoting better habitat and promoting browse, all of a sudden what you'll see, guys, is your hunting success directly follows that. Is because you're able to hunt downwind side of bedding areas that are still holding deer. You're able to hunt browse and food plots, right? AM back in the timber, gets in the rut, you're on them downwind side of bedding areas. If there's no browse in the bedding areas, at some point there's not going to be any deer there, right? You might as well stay in the house and watch college football, right? Because the deer aren't going to be there. I don't care if you're downwind side of what you think is bedding and it's thick cover. If there's no food in there, no woody browse, no browse, there's not going to be any does. It's a waste of time to even be there, right? So take this into consideration this year, guys. When you're building a property, the importance of browse has to be at the top of your concern. One, for the stewardship part of it, and two, for the hunting part of it. Our channel is brought to you in part by these great partners: Painted Arrow Outdoors, Race Proven Performance, and C6 Land Clearing, Harrodsburg, Kentucky, Drone Deer Recovery, and Pruitt Productions, Cuddyback, Bass Pro and Cabela's, Ace Hardware, Harrodsburg, Kentucky, Northwoods Whitetails, your food plot headquarters, Plot Doctor and Harper Growing Solutions, Real Wood Productions, the log trough feeder, Scent Thief, Hunt Stand, and First Form Outdoors. Like I said, not caring where you're at in the whitetail range, if you forget that step, the only thing that you're banking on is food plots. And when those ag fields in the Midwest, when those big beautiful food plots in the Midwest all leave, what else is there? Whoever has that browse, whoever, you know, and sometimes it's not even intentional, but whoever has that browse, a guy had their property logged, right? Family had their property select cut, and there's a bunch of browse in it. They didn't even, like I said, they didn't even intentionally build it that way for deer. But all of a sudden, there's 80 acres, and you own 500 in the Midwest, and there's no deer on it. But that 80 acres, 5 miles down the road, is loaded with deer. And if you haven't seen that, you haven't lived or drove around the Midwest very often, because it happens all the time. And why is that? Because it's more than just a big, beautiful green food plot. So take this into consideration, guys. That's why I like to divide the country into those areas, is because when I'm in each of those areas, there's always things that are hurdles, right? Hogs, drought, horrible soil conditions, snow, harsh winter conditions. All of that is obviously something that you have to take into consideration when I'm recommending how to get the best property built and have a property through a 90-day season and keep deer alive so you can have a season next year, right? So much to be learned by the power of browse. Not only because of the importance of the browse requirement to their stomach and their livelihood, but also the connection that it directly connects to our success in the fall with having a successful hunt, exciting hunts when we're holding deer, keeping deer, and being able to advance deer on to the next year in these horrible winter conditions like we're having right now. They will go miles and miles and miles away to find this stuff. Anytime that you're talking winter conditions where there's no food, no browse, there's no thermal cover, and they have to travel miles and miles away, guys, those critters, if they find something like that, they may never return to your farm next year, next summer. They may never come back because there's so much between where they had to go find it and where they started from. Sometimes they don't return. So keep that in the back of your mind this year, right? If you have a property that's going to be ready to log, you're doing some habitat improvements, you're not against or you're not for any of this habitat improvement stuff out there. Sadly, there's a lot of folks around the country that do that. I'm just going to plant my food plot. I'm going to sit in my redneck box blind on top of my food plots, and all this stuff is snake oil and it doesn't work. Well, those of us that are doing it are not only helping the health of the herd, but we're also having successful hunts, all because woody browse in general, was taken into consideration. Something huge to think about, guys.